everybody. Hello, everyone. This is Mr. 13 Things, aka Mark Patak, coming at you to do a really quick, just trying to sell the potion, if you would, of why it's a good idea to only learn as much as you can to start, only learn the first 1/8 of a circle in terms of the values here of the unit circle. So that's what my goal is here today. You see this one got cut off a little bit. So what we're going to be working with today is in fact the unit circle. And the reason why we're working, and you should begin working with unit circle right around 5th grade, is that you can all of a sudden learn to organize facts and learn them in patterns. Whereas when you are in 4th grade, you have to learn 390 math facts, which would be things like 1 times 1 is 1 and 7 times 6 is 42, I think. In this circle, the patterns of a circle are probably 150 math facts, but they come in a very distinct and clear pattern. So let's just look at what the unit circle is. First off, the unit circle is a circle where the radius equals 1, which means the diameter equals 2, which means the area equals pi. You'll see why later. And in fact, the circumference equals 2 pi, and always the full angle inside is also 2 pi. So the radius is 1, length unit, the diameter is 1, length unit, the area is pi square units, the circumference is a length unit, and the angle here has no units when you measure that angle in radians. We usually look at the unit circle centered at 0, 0, so we're going to call that point 0, 0 in the xy plane. We usually call that a positive x and this a positive y, though it doesn't need to. And if this is 0, 0, this point right here becomes 1 in the x and 0 in the y. And this point way up here, which is off of what we're going to look at, is 0 and 1. And you'll see later why we're doing things this way. There is a pretty clear line of symmetry there. Line of some sort of symmetry. We're spelling that there. Alright, so if we can learn the values at these points, we'll be able to learn the values all the way throughout the rest of the circle. So let's look at how we got to these 3 points. The first thing we did was take each of the radii, if you would, here, and we drafted, basically, we cut them in half. So we did this here, and we did that, if we would, to there. We drew one line out from the center to through the intersection to there. This one, I'm going to write it, is a 45-degree line. If we grab from this center point to the intersection here, this is a 60-degree line. And if we grab from the intersection to there, we have a 30-degree line. Of course, that means these angles here, in fact, are 30, 45, and 60. That's typically how you are presented with a unit circle, and they ignore this key thing here, which is a 15-degree line. And there's no necessarily, you can get to that 15-degree line later on, you'll see, by actually doing a bisecting an angle. So it is very possible to draft this next one up. So these numbers, the 45, the 60, and the 30 can be done without a compass, but this 15-degree line actually has to be done with a compass. And we'll show you how to do that another way, day, shape, or form, as once again we're looking at this being a 5th grade circle and a 5th grade skill. That's not to say it's taught in 5th grade. Many people never ever get this, but it is quite possible to build up your capabilities at 5th grade. All right, that said, I'm just going to undo everything if I can do that. Edit, undo, which I can do by hitting Control Z. All that stuff's going away, and we're going to just look at the values, if you would now, of 15, 30, and 45, if you would, or pi over 12. And I'll do this by turning layer 2 off and making a new layer here. And what I'm going to do now is just show you those values and set in your brain just the 3 values here at 15, 30, and 45. And you do that this way. You open up the parentheses, you open up the parentheses, you open up the parentheses, and you open up the parentheses. You will have learned or will learn how the pattern in the 90 degree or the first quarter of the circle emerges, but what happens there is you quickly forget that in fact you really do only need to learn the first 45 degrees. I'll do an edit undo here. Edit undo. You only really need to learn the values in the first 45. So first off, if you know that this is at 0 and 0 and this radius, if you would, the radius equals 1, you know that this is a unit circle, and therefore that value there is a 1 and a 0. For the rest of these, you're going to skip these ones and do them last. You're going to do the most important one, the one that's never taught to you, and that is 15 degrees. And you're going to do it by recognizing a couple of things later, but by recognizing there is a number pattern here that emerges like this: 2, 4, 6, with square roots on the top and a plus. Later on, you're going to learn that the conjugate of this is going to be over. That's what it's going to be called, but you can instead now just learn to do 2, 4, 6, square roots on top, and with a negative. And so you know that the x component, or the x of that, is the square root of 6 plus the square root of 2 all over 4. And the y component is the square root of 6 minus the square root of 2 all over 4. Again, in 5th grade, you don't give them a name. You just say that, in fact, is what the coordinates are of that circle. For the last sets, you can try to go ahead and realize everything else up above here is going to be over 2. And then you can ask students exactly which one of these is going to be 1/2. And if you think about how we originally drafted this up, this first one here, that we know that the y of this is going to be 1/2, and 1 is going to be shared with 3. You'll see later how this emerges. And you have to have students realize that this value of the x and the y are both equal there, and so you have a pattern here of 2. So they kind of get a 1, 2, 3 within the knowledge that these are both the same. Square roots go on top of everything, and you can talk very quickly then about the triangles and how to make the square root of 2 and the square root of 3 from simple triangle before you calculate the numbers, which are also worth learning. So you now have values, it turns out, for the x and the y at 15, 30, and 45, or if you will, pi over 12 to here, pi over 6 to there, and pi over 4 to there. Once you drill this, like students know it as well as they know their times tables, you have power to quickly remake 150 values for the unit circle. Thanks for listening.